Hey everybody, and welcome to the Gauntlet, where we talk about everything esports news. I'm your host, Captain Zeus, followed by my co-hosts JT and Novabris. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Roster Mania just happened in the Overwatch League. We also have a new hero ban going on, China incident and how it's going to affect its teams, as well as the new homesteads. First things first, though, we got Roster Mania. I'm going to start off with you, Nova. How did this affect your teams?
It really affected a lot of teams, and one specifically I'm gonna look at is London. That basically looks unrecognizable. There's a bunch of people coming into London that have no stats, no records, basically no experience in this league, maybe in contenders or so. But other than that, they only have two people who actually have experience, and honestly, London looking like a little mystery now coming into this season.
Okay. JT, what about you, man?
Well, the one I want to highlight at least is Fisher. I think he's going to make a big upgrade over on Vancouver, and I think he's going to be a star player by the end of the year. He had some issues over on Gladiators. I don't think that's going to come over as he comes over. He did retire, but I think that has to do with some toxicity rather than him just not being in the league or wanting to be in the league.
I got you there. Yeah, there's a lot of turmoil going on with the drama and the roster mania. I know on the LA Valiant, we got a lot of new people coming in with Gig and KSP. And then there's also on, I believe it's Paris, we got some South Korean players coming in as well. So a lot of changes going on throughout the entire league. Definitely want to see how that plays out. But speaking of how it's going to affect the league, a hero ban. That's a huge thing that just happened what was it, like 2 weeks ago? Last week? JT, I'll start with you on this. How do you think the hero ban is going to affect the teams in the league?
You know, I'm pretty disappointed in this new ruling. I wish they would have given it to them months ago. They gave it to them after the rosters were already set. They already kind of had like a flow for what their teams were trying to be. And now they have a whole new ruling. If they have like a one-trick wonder, you know, they might not get their champion. And, you know, that's just a problem. I don't like that as a competitive ruling. If they have a problems with a certain meta, I think they should just balance to correct it or incentivize teams to do something else. I just think that takes away some of the competitive aspects. If they would have started this from the beginning or gave them like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months notice, it would have been a different story.
What about you, Nova? How do you feel about this?
I'm actually gonna give this hero ban an opportunity. I feel like with this hero ban, it kind of gives the players a little bit of chance to try out different characters and hell, bring out different new comps as well. I mean, different metas that we always see, like goats and pirate ship and stuff like bunker. I mean, banning characters that are quote unquote dominant and banning them just for a week, you know, just to spice it up, it doesn't seem that harsh. And then bringing our players being able to play new characters that don't even get into the spotlight as much, like I said, can bring up new metas, new play styles. So I think it's pretty good.
Okay, JT, any thoughts on that?
I just think it punishes like tier teams where they only have like 1 or 2 really good players, and it doesn't affect teams like a New York, who is just a team comp fighting team, as much. So I think it's a big disadvantage for a lot of the teams. If they have like a solo carry, someone who's really, really dominant in the league, I think it's going to make them harder to shine, because what happens if their main carry gets banned? I just think it's unfortunate.
I can agree there. I know a lot of teams, specifically when there's a huge comp coming out, like last year it was goats, the previous year was dive, that if they ban one hero like Reinhardt, Winston, it's going to affect the entire league, all the teams. Now there are teams that are like Chengdu that don't do the meta, comps, so they won't be affected as much. It'll be cool to see kind of how it plays out and what comps can be made from this. I don't know, though. It's definitely interesting. I agree that they should have done this way more in advance, though.
Yeah, but I still feel like it spices it up. Like you brought up Chengdu, I believe.
Chengdu, yeah.
Chengdu, like that, we can bring in other teams that have that play style of the unexpected. Basically, whenever you watch some games it's like, oh, the new same old meta. Basically, you're just trying to see whose meta beats what, or which dive beats the other dive. You know what I mean? And so bringing in this different aspect of different characters, different gameplay, I think it actually spices it up. So I don't find it that bad. It's unfortunate, like JT was saying, there's some players that have that go-to character for a lot of wins, but spicing it up, basically, that's all.
That's true. That's true. And speaking of Chengdu, we know that the coronavirus is going around in China, and they just for February and March suspended all of the homesteads in the China region. I'll start with you, Nova, on this one. How do you think this is going to affect those Chinese teams and their players?
Now, I feel like it's very unfortunate this virus is spreading around, and I wouldn't say this is really punishing or hurting the Chinese teams and fans. Honestly, it's in the best for their health and safety for these Chinese teams and fans, to be honest. Like I said, it is unfortunate, but we just want to be safe when we play these games. It is kind of a disadvantage, They had a homestead, they could have used it. Home games always help your team, having your fans back you up. But unfortunately, that little advantage for these Chinese teams, they went away.
Yeah, I agree. And, prayers and condolences going out for everyone in China there. JT, how do you feel about this?
Well, I kind of want to echo the same sentiment. I mean, it's very unfortunate. It's kind of, it's a terrible thing that's happening. Player safety should be top priority. I don't actually think it's going to be as big of a disadvantage because they're going to be, I believe, stationed in the U.S., so being stationed here, they don't have to travel as much. So, maybe jet lag. I don't think it's going to be as negative as people are making it out to be. But, of course, the toll that their families and everyone back home is having to deal with this, I mean, that's a problem. So
I agree with you there. And speaking of the homesteads, I know every team now is getting into the homesteads. Everyone's going to be traveling around a lot. From what I'm hearing, Paris isn't in Paris yet. They have a temporary homestead in New Jersey for the time being. I think they're going to do that for London as well. But for the most part, all of the teams have their own homestead. JT, I'm going to direct this one to you. How do you feel the homesteads are going to affect the teams and their gameplay throughout the season?
So I think this is bad for the teams overall, short term. Long term, I think it's going to be a really good thing. You have your home fan base. You can get your area invigorated and get them out. That's going to be a real advantage at some point. I think it will be a slight advantage right now, but I think the jet lag and having to travel so much will be a bigger hindrance than the fans' help. But as far as fans, that's great. I'm excited to see that. I think it's good for the league overall.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Nova, what do you think?
It always feels just like sports, football, basketball, always having to travel. But honestly, like JT said, it always feels good to have fans backing you up and being able to play your best, knowing people watching you are there to support you unconditionally. And I feel like it's just pretty good for these homesteads. Like JT was saying, jet lag. You're going to feel groggy. Sometimes you can't play your best whenever you go to a different homestead each time. But, fans, unconditional love definitely helps you kind of get out of that groove sometimes.
And I know with the NFL and the NBA, they're doing more out-of-country traveling, having like a stadium here and there that they'll do, or they'll play some matches there. When they get to the point where they're going to be going out of country a lot, JT, what do you think this is going to do to the team, especially if they're playing 2, maybe 3 matches that weekend?
See, I think that's going to be a huge advantage for whatever team's traveling. Reverse that. Whichever team is traveling to the new country or new area, it's going to be a really big advantage for the home team because jet lag is such a big factor. So either teams are going to have to leave way earlier, which will affect practice and routine, or they're going to have to just deal with the jet lag. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think any sports has really quite figured out the answer to that. In fact, in the NFL, most teams travel 3 days before to avoid any jet lag and get ready for the time changes. But they're not even traveling out of the country most of the time. If they're going when they play in London, they travel like 7 to 14 days in advance. So it's a big deal. It's really difficult for a team to go and travel that far. I think the bigger issue here is they're making teams play back-to-back games in a weekend. If they only had to prepare for one different team, it's a different story. It's a whole lot less prep. So I'm just worried about how much prep time each team's going to get for each match.
And I know with the new schedule, there's no stages anymore. So everyone's going to have a lot more time off. And they did this specifically for the players. I know the New York XL star Pine, he was out for 10 matches due to panic attacks the previous season. So I know they're definitely, with the homesteads, I know they're going to be trying to make sure all the teams could have some times off, some rest. Nova, how do you think the new schedule and the new homesteads are going to affect the players compared to the first 2 seasons?
I really feel like this helps the players a lot. Like you said, it gives them a lot more time to take a break, relax a little bit, and not always constantly having to play games over and over again each week. Last 2 seasons, definitely they jam-packed a lot of games and matches into the week. But with this more controlled state of matches flowing each week, I feel like the players can find more pattern, or they can find more of a pace, there you go, to pace themselves going into each match and feel more better.
Okay. JT, I know they're trying to, from what I'm hearing, they're going to try to get up to 28 teams for the Overwatch League, especially out of country as well, expansion teams. How do you think those new additions will affect the schedules?
Well, hopefully it cuts down on having to play multiple games back to back. More teams means less games for each team, which I'm a big fan of. I'm player first for the most part, so I would prefer to see high quality games rather than a lot of them. And I think that will help adding an extra 8 teams. Now, expansion teams never start off very strong, at least in historical senses. Been a few outliers, so I'm not really looking forward to any of those teams playing for the first year or 2. But after a couple years, they'll pick it up, I'm sure.
Okay. Nova, same question. What do you think?
Okay. Hopefully they can balance it out, schedule it right. With 28 teams, that's a lot to balance out. And hopefully the league doesn't, make teams play back to back and have the teams basically get tired of playing teams over and over again. I feel like with 28 might be too much. I'm not entirely sure with this. Hopefully the league knows what to do with adding these teams in, but I'm not entirely certain.
I think 28 teams that's going to be a lot. It's definitely going to be a lot to cover. Schedule-wise, it definitely brings some diversity. It'll be tough for everyone to play everyone twice, or multiple times, I should say. But it'll definitely bring in some new talent, some new looks, maybe even some new comps. I know Chengdu likes to come in and spice things up with their random compositions. But I think that's going to cover it for today as well. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
I just had one thing. It's very rare for us to agree on any topics, so I'm kind of impressed that we were able to agree on anything.
I agree.
I concur.
I concur. All right, well then that's going to wrap it up for this segment. I'm Captain Zeus, followed by my co-hosts JT and Novaverse. See you guys in the next video.